Yo, what up, what's happening? Back with another episode, Crypto Squid Games. Man, I got a good one for y'all, man. First, we start off with thank the Lord for another day of love, mercy, grace, and all you do for us. Continue to bless us, hold us, mold us, keep us, direct our path, block all negativity, and bring all prosperity our way. Second, this is not a financial advice channel. I'm not a financial advisor. Don't put no personal information in the comments. If you do, it's going to get blocked, chopped, and reported. And if somebody contact you saying they with us, or they from here, and wants a personal information or anything like that, don't click on no links, report it. You know what I mean? Because it ain't us, because we don't rock like that. Let's get into it.
Today, Bitcoin holds steady ahead of the Fed's latest decision on interest rates. The Senate passes its rule book for stablecoin issuers, the Genius Act. And Kristen Smith of the Solana Policy Institute shares what's next as that bill advances in Congress. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Tanea McKeel. Digital currencies holding their ground as investors wait and see how President Trump approaches tensions between Israel and Iran and what the Fed decides to do with interest rates this afternoon. At noon Eastern, Bitcoin traded at the $104,000 level, Ether crossed back above $2,500, and Solana is in the red, falling to $145. Okay, let's talk about the top stories. Hackers stole more than $90 million from Iran's largest crypto exchange, Novitex, according to analytics firm Elliptic. The firm said the funds were taken from the platform and put into addresses with anti-government messages that referenced Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The pro-Israel hacking group, dubbed Predatory Sparrow, claimed responsibility for the hack and promised to release the exchange's source code. The group also claimed responsibility for a separate hack of the Iranian state-owned SEPA bank. Next, the Senate has passed its landmark stablecoin legislation dubbed the Genius Act. The upper chamber voted 68-30 to pass the bill, which creates a framework for dollar-pegged stablecoins.
So they just passed the Genius Act. So we're going to see, in the near future, how this affect crypto. For the most part, it should affect it in a positive way because it opened it up for banks and other institutions to be able to jump in head first, with some kind of regulatory clarity and the fact that, they can really put their money somewhere because it's a law behind it now, at least with the stable coins, not necessarily with all other cryptos.
And a pathway for companies to issue these digital currencies. The move comes as retail giants like Amazon and Walmart have reportedly been considering their own stablecoins. The bill now heads to the House, which has its own stablecoin legislation in the works, the Stable Act. All right, for more on the passage of the Genius Act is my conversation with Kristen Smith, the president of the Solana Policy Institute. She weighs in on what's next for the bill and the latest on the potential launch of another crypto-focused investment vehicle, Solana ETFs. Kristen, thank you so much for joining me in Crypto World today. Let's start with your reaction to the passage of the Genius Act. Obviously, in your previous role at the Blockchain Association, you've been working a long time with U.S. regulators to push a bill like this through Congress. What's your initial take on the news that we got yesterday?
Yeah, well, I think it's incredibly exciting news. This is legislation that Congress started first talking about back in 2019 and something that multiple Congresses have considered and debated. And so to get the entire Genius Act, the stablecoin regulatory framework, through the full Senate is quite an achievement. It is incredibly rare for the Senate to consider these sort of single issue bills like this. And it obviously took a long time to get it through the floor. And so we were excited to see such a strong bipartisan supermajority vote.
Now you imagine this, it's been 16, 17 years since Bitcoin was created. Maybe 17, 18, for the most part, but it's been a while, over a decade since this thing was created, and they just starting to pass laws on it. But it's going to be another 5 years, easy, before it really start to pump like it should, at least 5-10 years. So you still got time. You ain't too early, but it ain't too late.
We had 18 Democrats join a majority of Republicans for 68 votes. And this, I think, is a really strong signal that this bill is ready to go, and we're hopeful that the House will take it up quickly and pass it along to the president for signature.
The bill now heads, of course, to the House. What is your sense on the path that it faces there? The Senate, faced hurdles to address national security and registration concerns. So, do you have a sense about how quickly we could see this move through the lower chamber?
Yeah, well, it's our hope that the House moves quickly on this. I think that where the legislative language landed is in a really good spot. There were a lot of negotiations between Republicans and Democrats in the Senate, but there were also a lot of conversations going on behind the scenes with the House. So I think we're in a place where the language is good, and I know it's something that President Trump, I think, is eager to sign, and so we're hopeful that it will move along as quickly as possible.
You are at the Solana Policy Institute now, so I have to ask you about Solana ETFs. It seems like there have been several little developments in the past few days on the progress of the Solana ETFs. Can you get us up to speed on where the potential asset managers that would be issuing these funds are in the process and what kind of timeline we're looking at?
Yeah, well, I think there's a really strong chance that the next asset class within crypto for ETFs that's going to be approved is Solana. I think there are, as of yesterday now, 8 different applications pending before the SEC, and I think the deadline for the 19B4s is sometime in mid-October. And so we could see some additional action on that. I think what's really exciting about these Solana ETF applications is they're posing new questions around the treatment of staking and whether that can be allowed within an ETF. They're looking at issues related to in-kind contributions to the ETFs. And so I think, there's a lot of back and forth, but this SEC is incredibly engaged, and I'm, hopeful that we'll see some final decisions on those in the months ahead.
And as you kind of just alluded to, it's obviously a much more friendly regulatory environment for this industry versus where we were a few months ago. With these, with the Solana ETF specifically, what would you say are the biggest challenges from a policy perspective?
Yeah, well, I don't even know if it's challenges. I think what's happening right now is the process as it's supposed to be happening. I think the issuers and the SEC are going back and forth, and the SEC is posing smart and thoughtful questions. And so I don't think it's sort of this issue that we had last time where there was such a resistance on behalf of the SEC to the point where Grayscale had to sue to ultimately get them to move forward. And so I think now it's really just a matter of running the process. I think that we sat down with the crypto task force last week. They've done, I think, over 130 meetings so far with different folks in the crypto industry, and they're really taking like a holistic approach to what is within their authority to regulate within the crypto ecosystem. And so, they see this as part of our financial future. It was actually amazing. We worked with a great coalition of folks and introduced or submitted a bunch of papers today to the SEC on what we can do to modernize regulations so that we can enable equities to be traded on chain. So they're thinking of a range of topics, but I think the process around the ETFs is one that's like fairly established, and we need to just run the playbook, and hopefully we'll see some approvals in the near term.
Okay, I do want to talk about those proposals. I'm going to come back to that in a second, but just to bring the Solana ETF issue back to markets and investing, can you talk a little bit about why Solana ETFs are important to SOL investors and to the SOL community? Obviously, when we saw the Ether ETFs come out, the Ether ETFs are really coming back with a vengeance right now for this past month in terms of inflows, but obviously, nowhere near where the Bitcoin ETFs are in any case. And then institutional investors, at least according to the conversations that I usually have, simply aren't interested in this kind of altcoin ETF summer. So how much impact would the approval of Solana ETFs have on Solana investors in the community?
Well, I think ETFs in general are a really good vehicle for a much broader set of investors to get exposure to a certain asset class. And I think over the past several years, there's been a lot of focus on educating institutions and Wall Street about what Bitcoin is. And what we're seeing now is a shift. Everyone understands what Bitcoin is, but they're trying to figure out what is it that these other blockchains can do. And different blockchains have different features. Solana is a smart contract platform. It is very fast. It has very low fees. There's a tremendous amount of developer activity happening on Solana. It's actually the most used blockchain in the world right now. And so I think for investors who want to have a piece of the future internet, of internet capital markets, that having an option to invest in Solana via an ETF would be a really compelling situation. And so yeah, we're excited to see that. But obviously, there's a lot of other things happening with Solana. There's people are building community-owned infrastructure networks on Solana. We're bringing equities onto Solana. It's a great platform for stablecoin issuance. And so, these public blockchains can do many different things. And I think over time, Wall Street will understand how important these foundational layer one blockchains are.
And then going back to your announcement today, the SPI pitched the SEC's crypto task force on a compliant tokenized securities network. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, the beauty of this infrastructure, like I was saying, is it can do many different things. And it turns out a layer one blockchain like Solana is an amazing set of rails for the issuance and trading of equities. I think the issue that we've had over the past several years is we haven't had the right kind of guidance from the SEC as to how to go about doing that. And so there are a lot of requirements under securities laws that need to be met in order to issue and trade securities. And so we submitted a set of proposals along with some partners who we've been working with within the crypto ecosystem that sort of lay out a framework for how we think it can be done. And so I think this is really exciting. I think it's going to take a little bit of time for this to come online, but what's fantastic is we can go into the SEC and have these conversations and propose ideas and get feedback and iterate on them. So the SEC doesn't have to go it alone, but neither does the industry. There's really this collaborative back and forth there that is going to help provide the right kind of guidance that will ultimately allow all of these new assets to come on chain.
And at the end of the day, I think gonna open the floodgates for everybody to be able to dump money in it, and it's gonna rise like crazy. It is what it is. The whole world going digital, whether you like it or not. So the best thing you could do is try to, just be smart, be cautious, do your research, and handle your business when it comes to it. I ain't saying get on the boat. I ain't saying miss the boat. All I'm saying is be smart about it. Crypto's quick gains. You don't want to get caught up in no rug pulls, no pig butchering scams, none of that. Look at what Congress doing. Look at what the Senate doing. Look at what the law's doing, and try to move accordingly. And with that, y'all be blessed. Stay safe. Peace.